As of June 2022, you simply cannot get hold of Raspberry Pis. But what if there was a cheaper and better alternative for your retro games console that you could buy off the shelf right now? Let me show you how to turn a £35 Android TV box into a full retro gaming system. Hi and welcome to Bytes and Bits. The Raspberry Pi 4 or even the Raspberry Pi 3 are great devices for retro gaming, but at the moment, it's now June 2022, you just can't get hold of one of these without going onto the black market on eBay and paying upwards of £100 for a 4GB Pi 4 model. But don't despair, there is a great alternative in the form of these cheap Android TV boxes. Now this one is labelled as an X96 Max Plus, but they're fairly generic units which do roughly the same job but in different boxes. Where there are significant differences though are in the processor, RAM and flash storage options. The main choice you'll need to make when buying one of these units is the processor. Now they all use System on a Chip or SoC devices, usually from Allwinner, Amlogic or Rotchip. Now all of them work well as a TV box, but when it comes to retro gaming, some of these are obviously better than others. So of these three manufacturers, I would tend to go for an Amlogic device, as they tend to provide much better performance at the same price point. Now further, within the Amlogic powered Android boxes, you'll also see that they do provide a range of Amlogic processor options. Now for me this really breaks down into two choices based mostly on cost. If you want to pay between sort of £35 and £40 for your gaming system, and this will give you one that can cope with everything up to and including the PlayStation 1 and the Nintendo 64, with maybe a bit of PSP and Dreamcast thrown in, you need to go for an Android box powered by either the S905X3 or S905X4 processor. Now between these two there isn't much performance difference, but the X4 is marginally better, and these devices will give you about the same performance as a Raspberry Pi 4. Indeed, that S905X3 with 4GB of RAM powers the Odroid C4, which is a direct competitor to the Raspberry Pi 4, with actually slightly better performance. Now if you're happy to move up to around about the £120 mark, then you can go for an S922X powered device, and these will give you around a 40 to 50% performance increase over the X3 and X4 boxes. And with these you'll pretty much have full PlayStation Portable and Sega Dreamcast gameplay. And again, for all of these units, I'll put a selection in the description down below where you can head off and get one for yourself. So once you've decided on a processor, simply go for the most RAM that you can get within your budget. So the more and the faster RAM you have, the better for emulation. Now built-in flash storage is not so important for us in this case. So if you plan to use the device as an actual Android TV box, then yes, you will need flash storage to hold your apps and data in exactly the same way as you would on your mobile phone. But with the main emulation strategy that we're going to use in this video, we're actually going to replace the built-in flash drive with our own external SD card, and we're going to run the entire device from that. So the built-in flash isn't really used. So the box I've chosen here is powered by an Amlogic S905X3, and I've gone for one with 4GB of RAM and 32GB of flash storage. And I picked this up from Amazon for around £35, and there are no stock issues, so you should be able to get hold of one without any problems. And again, I'll put some links to this and similar products down in the video description. Don't forget as well to check out the project page on my bytesandbits.co.uk website, where again you'll have more links and full information about everything that's going on in this project. Now, the actual unit itself then, as you can see, it's about twice the size of a Raspberry Pi, but it does come in a nice sleek case with connections then on two of the box sides. So on one side, you've got a USB 3 port and a USB 2 port, along with the micro SD card slot. Then if we look at the other side, you've got a gigabit Ethernet port, a headphone socket, an infrared remote extension, and then optical sound output, as well as the power input. Now this power input is using the supplied power supply, which is a standard 5 volts DC unit, but it does use one of these cylindrical power plugs rather than a USB cable. Now to control the box, you also get an infrared remote, but you can also connect a game controller and a USB keyboard and mouse to make things that bit easier. So if we power up the device, we get it running in its default mode as an Android version 9 TV box. And this is basically the same as your Android phone, with the different, of course, Android TV interface. And you have access to the Google Play Store, so we can download and install a whole range of applications. Now, as a media device, it does work really well. So YouTube, Amazon Prime and Netflix all run seamlessly from the pre-installed apps. To get the Disney app installed, I had to sideload it using the APK file, as the App Store said that it wasn't compatible. But as we'll see in a while, this isn't actually hard to do, so you should be able to get all the apps you need up and running. Now for native Android gaming, this unit will perform as a low to mid-range device. But as it's Android, of course, we can install some Android-based emulation packages such as RetroArch. Now this works well with everything up to the original PlayStation and some of the less intensive Nintendo 64 titles. So this is definitely going to be an option if you don't want to turn this into a dedicated retro games console. But to squeeze a little bit of extra performance, as well as getting a much better front-end system, we need to ditch Android and use one of the Linux-based gaming systems. Now there are a few retro gaming front-end systems to choose from, with really Batocera and Emuelec being the main contenders. So in this video, I'm going to use Emuelec, simply because I've just made a video on Batocera for Mac and desktop PCs. Now if you do think it would be useful to see Batocera being installed, then do let me know in the comments and I will make a second video specifically for that. Now, so Emuelec then, it's another one of these packages that uses Emulation Station, RetroArch, and a few other standalone emulators to create a unified retro gaming console. Now, as I said earlier, it runs from a separate SD card and bypasses the internal software of the unit. So it's basically replacing the Android operating system with its own version of Linux. Now, the original operating system and flash storage is left totally untouched, so as soon as we remove the SD card and reboot the device, we'll be straight back into our standard Android TV system. So you can use this device for both options. So let's look at how we can then install Emuelec. So to start, we do need to make sure that we've actually got the hardware that we paid for. So if you order a device through one of the major online outlets, these will tend to be okay. But if you do decide to buy direct from China to get some of the cheapest prices, then do be aware that these manufacturers are not always quite so honest about what they've put inside the box. So to do this, we're going to use a package called X96. Now you can download this through Google Play, but if for some reason you don't see it listed or your particular device hasn't got access to Google Play, then we can sideload it using an APK file. And actually I find this quite a useful thing to set up, as it's a really good way of installing apps. Again, as I say, if you haven't got access to Google Play Store, or for some of the apps which the Play Store may hide from you. And again, as you saw earlier, when I was trying to download the Disney app, it wasn't available actually through the Play Store. Now the easiest way to do this is to install the APK Pure app from the apcure.com website. Now this is a site that provides direct access to the app installation files, bypassing the need for the Play Store. Now, if you don't want to install the APCure app, you can still download and install the APK files manually, but it just makes it a little bit more convenient. So to install the APCure app, we do need to go through the manual install process this one time. So if you visit the apcure.com website and click on the app download button on the right hand side, this should download an APK file to your computer. So save it onto a USB drive or a micro SD card that we can then plug into our Android TV box. You now need to power on your Android box, and once it's up and running, pop in your memory stick. We can then use the File Manager app to locate and install the downloaded files. So do this by either using the included remote control, but I do find it is so much easier if you plug in a keyboard and a mouse, especially when it comes to typing in things. So opening the File Manager app gives you access to all of your storage devices, and you should see a local disk drive, which is actually the internal flash storage, and then some other drive, which, as you can see on mine, it's labelled as a general USB drive. Now this is actually our SD card or your USB stick that you've just plugged in. If you don't see it, then try unplugging the drive and reinserting it. So if you open the drive by selecting it or by double clicking on it with your mouse, then you should see the apcure.apk file. So select this to install it. Now once this starts to install, you will probably see that it is asking for some special permission, which is basically going to allow it to install software. So you may get this warning message. So just click on the settings link, and then you'll see a list of devices which could install applications, and just make sure you select the file browser to allow it to install unknown apps. So if you click the back button or the right mouse button on my device, then it should eventually get you back to the file browser. So again, reselect the APK file, and this time you should be able to install the app. So once we've installed APK Pure, we then do need to give it permission to install apps as well. So for this, we can go straight to the settings screen. And then on the right hand side we can select device preferences, then security, and then unknown sources. And this will take us back to that installation permission screen, so just make sure that the APK Pure app is allowed to install apps. So we can now use this APK Pure app to install the software that we need. So open it up and then use the search bar to find X96. You can then click on the install button over on the right hand side and let it download and install the APK file. So if we open up X96, this shows us the whole set of system information. So if you go to the System tab, you can see the box make and model. The board and device show you the system on the chip processor code. So mine comes up as an Amlogic Franklin device, and it says again here it's got 4 GB of installed RAM. So you can check the Amlogic series names to find out what actual processor this is. So on this web page here, I can see here that the Franklin is listed as either an S905X2 or an S905X3. So just to confirm exactly which one I have then, if we go back into X96, we can go to the CPU tab and get a bit finer detail on the processor. So mine here says that it has 4 ARM Cortex-A55 processors. And again, if we do an online check for the S905X3 specifications, we'll see that that's the model that matches. So from this info, I'm pretty confident that I have got what I paid for. So you might wonder why we're going through this trouble of identifying the processor. So as I said, it is important to make sure you've got what you pay for, but we also need to verify that so that we can set up what's known as a DTB file for our specific processor when we install Emuelec or indeed Batocera. If we use a DTB file for the wrong processor, we'll simply get stuck on a black screen and nothing will happen. So, for now, there's just one more helper app that we need to install before we start playing with our Emuelec. So to get the TV box to boot from our SD card, it needs to be set in the update mode. Now usually you can achieve this by pressing down a little reset button, which is usually located somewhere on your device, usually on the bottom, or quite commonly it's actually inside the headphone socket. So you have to hold that down while you boot up the device. But a much more elegant way of doing this is to use either the Emuelec Reboot app, which does actually require your device to be rooted, or a terminal emulator, which also has the advantage of adding a Linux-style terminal to your setup. So if we go either to the Play Store, or we can do it from the APK Pure app, and search for Terminal Emulator, you'll find this little app here, and we can then install it. If we open the app, we'll see that we now have a command line interface for our Android box. And again, we can do a simple ID verification on our processor by using this command. So cat/proc/device-tree/amlogic-dt-id. And this will list the processor device tree code for the one in our box. And it is worth making a note of this, as it can help with identifying the right DTB file a little bit later on. So at last we're ready to get Emuelec up and running. So first we need to download the correct boot disk image and burn it to an SD card. So if you go to this web address, this will list the latest emulator releases. So at the time of making this video it was 4.5, but if you scroll down a bit you'll come to the actual image file downloads. Now, unless your device is one of the named versions, as you can see here, like the Odroid versions and so on, then if it's not listed, then you simply use the generic download. So once you've got the file downloaded, of course we'll need to burn that onto an SD card, either using Balena Etcher, or my preference at the moment actually is the Raspberry Pi Imager app. So just boot up your Imager app. For the operating system on mine, I'm just going to select Custom. That then lets me choose my downloaded image file, and then I can then burn that onto my SD card. So once the card is ready, just remove it and then reinsert it into your PC so that it can recognize the new drives on there. Then open up your file manager and you should see the Emuelec drive listed. So select this drive and then open up the devices tree folder. Now these are the device tree files that are needed to set up Emuelec so that it matches with the processor in your TV box. Now this stage can be a bit confusing, as the information that we've gathered already will help us to identify the file, but it doesn't always exactly match the names that you find in here. So if I scroll down this list, I don't find a file that matches my exact device tree info, the one that we got using the terminal emulator. So there are some SM1 files in here, and obviously some of them are going to be for the S905X3, but they don't exactly match what I found. So it's always then best to check the Corelec list at this web address. And here you will either find your actual TV box or board listed, or you can simply go by the system on chip identifier and the amount of RAM that you have. So here you can see that I have a number of options for the S905X3 devices. So there are, as well as the memory, there's also options then for the network interface for the 100 megabit and 1 gigabyte variations. Unless you know different, I generally go for the 100 megabit version. So this is going to point me to using the SM905X3 4G.dtb file, again as I have a 4 gigabyte model. Now again, use all the information from the areas that we've already looked at to give you the best informed choice of DTB file. If when you get everything set up and your boot fails and just leaves you at a blank screen, then you've probably selected the wrong version. So simply come back, check again, and try another DTB file. So now that we've identified which file we need, we simply need to copy that into the root folder of our SD card. So once we've copied it in there, we need to rename it to dtb.img. And that is Emuelec ready to go. There are two main ways to get Emuelec to boot. And the TV box needs to be in update mode to boot from the SD card. So the first way is to find that update button, hold it in while you power on the box, and it should then boot from your SD card and start up Emuelec. The way I prefer though is to use Terminal Emulator in Android. So we first need to boot up the device, then pop in the SD card, and we can then use Terminal Emulator to issue the command reboot update. This will restart and reboot from the SD card. And I prefer this method as it lets me jump between the two systems without plugging and unplugging the SD card. And there's also an option inside Emuelec to reboot back into Android again. Now if you have installed the Emuelec Reboot app, you can also use this, but the app does require root access, as I've said, so you may find, like me, that it doesn't work. But if it does, it will save you time typing in that reboot command. So as Emuelec starts for the first time, it will go through some housekeeping and expand the drive image to use the full side of your SD card. So just let this run through and eventually you'll get to the main system select screen. If you find it gets stuck on a blank black screen for more than a few seconds, then I'm afraid it's gone wrong. You'll need to power off your device and check the SD card. Now I had a few issues with mine to start with, so here's a few of my experiences. I had an extension installed on my PC to allow it to read Linux format disks, and that was the ext2fsd app. And it really did not like the Emuelec SD card, and it would lie about moving and renaming files. So my first boot was done without any DTB image file, simply because it hadn't copied or renamed it. So do check yours has been saved correctly. Also, you might find that you've used the wrong DTB file, and that will cause the same blank screen. I've tried this to see what happens, and if you've had a couple to choose from, then you just might need to work through them to find one that actually works. So once you've got your system up and running, the first thing we need to do is to attach a game controller and then map its buttons. So just hold down a button until Emuelec recognises your controller. Then go through the mapping process. If your controller doesn't have a button, just hold down any of them and it will jump past that option. At the very end, the hotkey. This allows you to quit games and to call up the RetroArch menu, and usually people will set this to the select or the back button on your controller. So once you've got your controller mapped, you should now be able to navigate the user interface. Now the first thing I always do is to set up the network. So if you've got an Ethernet cable, just plug that in and you're ready to go. Otherwise, of course, we're going to need to set up a Wi-Fi link. So press the Start button to get to the menu and select Network Settings. By default, this will be off, so select the Enable Wi-Fi option to turn it on. Now once you've turned it on, you'll get the options to select your network and enter your password. So first select your SSID and then use the back button to return to the network settings and enter your password. Use the back button, which is the B button, to get back to the main user interface, and you should now be connected to Wi-Fi. So all that's left now is to get some games onto the console, and there are a few ways to do this, but the easiest two are to either use the network share and copy files over your network, or to copy them directly onto the SD card. So to copy games directly onto the SD card, you'll need to power down the box, pull out your SD card and then pop it into your PC. And you'll find it appears as either 2 or 3 removable drives. So the Emuelec drive is the system drive where we had added that DTB file, and the EEROMs drive is the one that was created to store all your ROM files. So if you open this up, you'll see the folders for each of the supported systems and also one for the BIOS ROM files. So just simply copy your game files into the relevant folders and pop the SD card back into your box. Now to save you the hassle of powering off and pulling out the SD card, you can also copy the files over the network connection. So make sure that Emuelec is up and running and open up the file manager on your main computer. So Emuelec automatically creates a Samba share to let you access that ROMs folder. So enter the network address //Emuelec, and this should try to connect to your Android box. Now you might be asked for some credentials, so the username is root and the password is Emuelec. Now make sure you remember the credentials so that you can easily get back in, and then click on OK and you should see the full SD card data area. So again, if you open up the ROMs folder, you'll see all the specific system folders, and from here again you just need to copy your games files over by dragging them and dropping them into the correct locations. Now some of the consoles do need BIOS files to work, so my advice is to get hold of them and copy them over now so that you can then play any system you want to. Now I found that if you can get hold of complete BIOS sets if you search for Batocera BIOS files on Google, and again they all use the same BIOS files. So if you do get hold of these files, just drop them into that BIOS folder on the SD card. So to get your games registered, you'll either have to reboot your device, or we can simply press the Start button to get to the menu, then select Game Settings, and then Update Game Lists. When you now go back to the main screen, you should see that some of the consoles and computers have been activated. So just use your game controller to select the console you want to play, and you'll get to a list of the games. Select one, and we're straight into some gameplay. To get out of a game, simply hold down your hotkey, which hopefully you've set to either the select or the back button, and press the start button while you hold it down. And you'll probably have to do it twice to confirm the game exit. So if we go back and look at one of the game sections, you'll see that the games are just cartridge images, and it would be much better if we had proper box art and some video previews. So to get these, we need to go through a scraping process. Now to get this working, you'll need to set up a free account with Screen Scraper. So if you visit www.screenscraper.fr, you can join there for free. They do ask for you to make a small contribution, and if you feel you can, please do, so that we can all keep this project going. But once you've done that, come back into your device and then pull up the main menu and select Scraper. So make sure the Screen Scraper is selected and then go to the Scraper settings. And here you can set what sorts of images to use in the user interface. So I like to use screenshots for the main image and 3D box art and wheel logos. You can then select any other bits you want. Now videos will give you a short gameplay clip while you browse the games, but they do take up space on your SD card. Not very much, but after a few thousand games it will of course mount up. So now scroll down to the bottom and enter in your Screen Scraper account username and password. We can then click back to get to the other options, and we can select games to scrape for. Now as this is our first scrape, we can just select all. Now go back and select the systems included, and this lets you specify which systems you want to gather media for, and you can turn each on and off or just select all. So now go back and select the Scrape Now button, and you should see the screen scraping process appearing up in the top right hand corner. Now of course that's going to take a bit of a time to go through, but once that's finished we can go into the game settings and again update our game list. And now we should be able to browse our game collection with full images and of course these little video clips to show us some of the gameplay. So that's everything all set up and ready to play. So let's see how well our little £35 retro games console performs. So all of our 8-bit and 16-bit consoles, all the way up to the Super Nintendo Entertainment System and the Sega Mega Drive, they're going to work perfectly well on this system, running at full speed. So there's going to be no issues at all, and you'll have all those games available to play to your heart's content. Similarly, PlayStation 1 games, they were all running at full speed, so there didn't seem to be any issues at all with running this game's console. So moving on to the Nintendo 64. So this is it running with the default emulator, and as you can see, although the graphics is not so bad, we are getting 43 frames per second here, but the sound, of course, is really not what we want it to be. And if we then move across to play something even more taxing than Mario Kart, such as GoldenEye, you can see that our little processor is struggling to even play this game at any sensible frame rate. But having said that, this is using Mupen64 as our emulator, and the system does allow you to switch emulators. So if we go back to our main control panel, and if we just hold the select button down as we're trying to play a game, you'll see a little menu pops up. And over here we can go to some advanced settings, and on this we can then switch the actual emulator that we're going to use to run this particular game. And one of the options here is to run the parallel emulator, and this is actually a much faster emulator than Mupen. So let's see how our game performs using this. So back into Mario Kart, you can see we're now hitting that ideal 60 frames per second, so running at full emulation speed. And of course all of our sound problems have now disappeared. Jumping back into the more intensive GoldenEye, you can see we're now again hitting our 60 frames per second, sound and graphics and all are running at full speed, and we have a totally playable gaming experience. And as I say, if GoldenEye is going to run, then pretty much every Nintendo 64 game will be absolutely fine. So pushing things a bit further, we can move on to the Sega Dreamcast. And this is a bit of a mixed bag. You can see here that the video sequence is, we've got really bad sound and it's a bit jerky. But once you get into the actual gameplay, it actually plays quite well. And you'll find this throughout this particular game here. So this is Ikaruga. As I say, the gameplay is very playable. It's just the cutscenes in between them where it seems to be playing as video seem to be quite bad. We can also then see this on something like Crazy Taxi. Now here, although the gameplay is a bit jerky and the sound is absolutely terrible, so perhaps Sega Dreamcast is pretty much at the limits of what this little box can do. So moving on to PlayStation Portable. So again, this is a bit of a mixed bag as we are at the limits of what this device can achieve. So this is a game called Little Big Planet, which is deemed a reasonably easy one to emulate. And as you can see, we're getting a very playable 31 frames per second here, and the game sound and everything is all running perfectly okay. But if we do put a little bit more pressure on the system by moving up here to Gran Turismo, you can see that again our frame rate drops down, and again we're getting that bad sound, all the broken up sound effects. So that's not really a playable game. And similarly, if we go across to one of the Ratchet and Clank games here, you'll see again that our frame rate is reasonably low. Again, our sound is a bit off. Perhaps you could just about get by with playing with this game, but as I say, it is a bit hit and miss with these PlayStation Portable games. Now of course you can move up to the S922X powered devices, and with these you're probably going to get both of these systems, the PlayStation Portable and the Dreamcast, working absolutely fine. But obviously that's going to be at the higher price point. So For me, these little Android TV boxes are a great way to build a retro gaming system for your TV or even as a standalone unit. Not only do you get all of the smart TV features from the Android powered operating system, but you also get all of the consoles up to and including the Nintendo 64, all of the home computers and all of the arcade classics. And all of this then for around £35. Plus, the big bonus at the moment is you can actually buy one right now. So compared to the Raspberry Pi 4, performance is at least on par, if not marginally better. Plus, of course, this unit comes in its own sleek case, with a power supply, HDMI lead and remote control. So overall, a great bargain. So I hope you found this video useful. Please do like and subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss any new content. And please do check the descriptions for links to these products so you can get hold of one of these yourself and start your own gaming console. So, have fun playing the games. I look forward to seeing you again in another video, and bye for now. For more games programming, electronics projects, and retro gaming, please make sure you like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and visit my website.